to the After Dark podcast, the podcast in which Anthony leads his unknowing friend Konrad by the hand through TV shows. Will Konrad like them? Will Konrad hate them? Will Konrad predict what's going to happen, or will he be lost in the dark? Find out now, only on the After Dark podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. My name's Anthony James, and that's Konrad.
Hello!
That's him. Well, Konrad, that's a streak of me messing up the intro for about eight times in a row or something like that. We're on a streak.
The first intro where I'm hearing glorious high definition, and you screw up my introduction. How dare you?
Yeah. So I'm sure you notice, Konrad, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, Konrad has finally got a camera that's able to do high definition. I know there was a lot of people around the world looking forward to seeing Konrad in high definition. There he is in all of his glory. I think we both have to say thank you very much to anyone who's donated to the podcast. Thank you very much for anyone who's bought a t-shirt. Here they are, the After Dark podcast t-shirt. When we put the t-shirt out, we didn't expect it to actually contribute to things like new cameras and things. But the money that we've made from the t-shirt, even though it's very small per t-shirt, has really contributed. Thank you very much for anyone who gave direct donations. If you want to support the podcast, our next sort of movement forward is going to be, we're not 100% sure yet. There's a lot of things we can still do to improve the podcast. We're not sure what we're going to do next.
Yeah, we found out that that trying to stream and render 4K video is really hardware intensive. So
yeah.
That might be on the horizon at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of plans for the future,
Yeah.
But in terms of like, we're pretty good at like pinpointing what we want next. So we'll let you know what we're aiming towards next. But anyway, for now though, we're in high quality, high definition, both of us.
Here we are.
We got good quality microphones, thanks to you guys as well. This podcast, I'll tell you what, it's sooner or later it's going to feel like we're sitting in that living room with you.
Yeah, pouring audio honey in the listener's ear.
Yeah, so thank you very much to anyone who has donated. Anyway, Konrad, before we start, I had a couple of things I needed to talk about.
Oh no.
The first thing was, I'm not going to dwell on this, there was hints at possible After Dark podcast is racist. Let's
They've rumbled us! We need to pack up the things, boys.
Yeah, there was some hints of it. That was my own characterization of it. No one actually accused of us being racist, but
okay.
The whole abuela situation.
Oh yeah.
Someone has pointed out, which in the second conversation we had about it, we're talking about that he French looks like his mother was Filipino, so therefore maybe it was a racist coach or racist guy on the phone.
Yeah.
It turns out actually his name is Alfonso, so probably his father is of Hispanic descent.
I tell you what, this racism stuff is complicated. Who would have thought that it's complex navigating these kind of situations?
Exactly. And I just want to say as well, one last thing before we get into this episode. Last week when we had the whole Mary Sue conversation, a lot of people in the comments sort of agreeing with us there. The commenter who made that comment originally, I apologize. I did not mean to have it come across like we were portraying you as a believer in Mary Sue's. It was legitimate questions. I think we actually said during it as well that we didn't think, but
I think that was my fault that I went to town on the idea of Mary Sue's and then only very briefly at the end mentioned that I wasn't attacking the poor question asker who had probably tuned out by that point.
Exactly. It was an oversight on my behalf, to be honest with you, because I didn't actually read the full question out. I sort of took it as a given that we weren't going to be attacking this poor commenter. But if you were to go and read the full comment, the commenter actually does say in the original comment that they feel that the Mary Sue trope or conversation point is quite sexist in nature. Yeah. So they actually were on our side before we even began the conversation. Yeah. Didn't mean it to come across that way. I apologize. Please don't unsubscribe.
So we're in hot water already this week.
In fact, you can unsubscribe if you want. If we've lost your trust, that's fine. But I just needed to apologize for my soul to be clean.
Okay, well that's very big of you.
Yeah, well, I'm a very big guy. Right, guys, so there we go. After Dark Podcast t-shirt, link in the description. If you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Culture Cave, thank you very much if you have. If not, you could subscribe on podcast audio apps. There's a lot of people who listen to us in the car, in the kitchen while they're cooking, all sorts of things like that. You don't generally need to see what's going on the screen. But also, you could also like the video, which would be a real big help. Send us an email at adpodmail@gmail.com if you have any questions. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Comment, give us your thoughts. Comment, give Konrad a question for next week. We will be having a few questions from some listeners later on in the episode. What do you think, Konrad? Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
Okay, before we get into the episode, I wanted to mention there's been a few people who've been sort of requesting or saying that they missed the images at the bottom of the YouTube video for as we're moving through the episode. Now, I'm going to give two reasons very quickly why I took them away. First thing is, it actually does add at least an hour of work to me, or half an hour, I would say, because I have to actually take the pictures, put them into the videos. Having said that, I do agree that it adds something extra to the videos. The second reason I took them out was Konrad and I had spoken about possibly not doing a bit piece by piece linear way through an episode. Mm-hmm. Like, we're sort of with Dark, we very much went through minute by minute, talked about what happened. With the OA, we weren't intending to do that. Having said that, the style of myself as a host, it sort of went that way anyway.
Yeah.
So, and I actually quite like that format. So it seems as if we are going to continue to do that. So the idea of bringing them back in isn't off the table whatsoever. In fact, surprise for you guys, here they are here.
Ba-da-ba-da! Enjoy.
Yeah, so I'll edit in post of them coming in at that point.
You leave all of this in the video as well.
Yeah, all this is going to be in the video. Yeah, that was my intention. Nice. So it's going to come. There they are. All right, so let's get on with it then. So we open up with Prairie in like sort of I've called it in my notes a lumpy tundra. It's a lumpy piece of land, that's for sure.
It puts me. I don't think you've actually ever played this game, but it puts me in mind of the planetoid/centaur Nessus in the game Destiny 2, which is in the process of being terraformed by a time-traveling robot, a race of robots called the Vex, and they basically turn planets into like very incredibly verdant ecosystems, but there's like loads of like milk everywhere. Or it's not actually milk, but it looks like milk. And the opening of this episode, where it says away, and it's got like the kind of milky liquid flowing over sand, and then Prairie waking up in these like on this kind of like verdant stonework in this weird landscape, really put me in mind of that. Which I don't think it's necessarily referencing it, but it definitely feels alien.
Well, I think this came out before Destiny 2.
Possibly, yeah.
2016, this came out.
Yeah.
So Destiny 2 maybe be referencing this, but
could be.
For me, it actually felt like kind of like if the land was a brain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, bumpy brain land.
Yeah, bumpy brainland. That's what I think. And the whole idea of an ND as well sort of fit for me. But so she wakes up in bumpy tundra brainland, and she says that she could hear them screaming, like Scott and Rachel and Homer screaming her name, but then all of a sudden they were gone.
Yeah.
For the second time of her life, she was dead. I've got a lot of more notes on this in terms of moving us through, because this is a huge meaty scene to start the episode off
it's
with.
a hell of an opening. It's like...
Yeah, so basically she goes through the thing, goes into a little house. All the stars are there. Katoon's there again. I'm going to let you go off from there rather than me go through bit by bit.
Okay, so yeah, step one, she's died again, but she hasn't really died again. But I suppose from her point of view, she has gotten close enough to dying that it's hard to tell the difference, basically. Or I mean, I guess she has died, but there's a decision you can make when you die where you can choose not to stay or something like that. We'll get into that into a second. But so honestly, after like the reveal of this place, the big question to me first off was, does this happen to everyone, or does it just happen to a select few people? And I feel like the episode eventually gets to the point where it kind of, in a roundabout way, answers that question, although maybe that's me misinterpreting it, but we'll probably come back to that a bit later as well. But I love the presentation of the kind of house on stilts of Katoon's home in this area. It gave me real kind of almost like Baba Yaga vibes, like the sort of witch's house on stilts in an alien landscape. Which really appealed to me, because it's very incongruous, it's very odd, but in a really appealing way. And we're just getting at the opening of this episode, we just get such an enormous amount of information dumped on us. It's like, okay, her name is Katoon. This entire conversation about Prairie being able to stay if she wants to, and Prairie rejecting it and essentially being like, no, I've got stuff that I still need to do with Scott and Homer and the others, and this kind of like desire she has for humanity, even with all the pain it brings, which Katoon says she can take away. and there's a definite emotional connection between Katoon and Prairie, I feel like, which I have some ideas about. And it feels like Katoon is trying to save her from this. So when Prairie initially rejects the offer to stay here forever, even after she sees her dad, she's offered this kind of she's offered this bird which she fishes out of her cosmic pond, in the sense
she goes fishing for a bird.
Yeah, exactly. And she there's this price that she's paying, and essentially she's not going to be reunited with her father to go back to save the others. I think it's interesting that her dad has the same scarification marks on his face as Katoon has. Whether that's kind of just a, I don't know what you'd call that really. There's just maybe a kind of aesthetic choice to indicate that someone has found residence in this place or something along those lines. It certainly struck me.
Did we mention in the first episode when we saw Katoon the idea of it looking like Braille? Did we mention that?
I think that was about the back scars for Prairie. I don't know if we mentioned.
Yeah, well, the Katoon scars for me in this episode did look a bit like Braille to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of those like scarification designs on the face do look like. They sort of like, very bumpy. But yes, so they absolutely do possibly read that way. I think there's some really great writing in this scene. The line "to exist is to survive unfair choices" is a great piece of dialogue. And then we get the reveal of Katoon showing off her one wing. Maybe she has another one, but when I saw that, I was like, one-winged angel, and immediately started thinking about ways in which I could reference Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII in this episode. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say I thought about it. I'm letting you off. Oh, I could have gone so much harder on that. Believe you me. I had the song, the Nobuo Uematsu song, playing in my head when this scene was going on. But yeah, so Katoon, there's a few things she says here, or I'm not even comfortable calling them her, to be honest. Like they, I feel like is a more accurate gendering of this character, because they feel so far beyond a human in terms of what they're saying here. So first off, all 5 of you must work together to avert a great evil. What is the great evil? Who is the 5th member of this group? What's who is that actually referring to?
Yeah.
And then we get the big drop, which is, you are the original. So I'm like, okay, the OA, the original something. She's got one wing. And then in a couple of scenes' time, we'll see Prairie drop the word angel in there. So I don't know. OA seems to me like it might stand for original angel or something like that. Which I don't know. That seems. That could be really cheesy, depending on how they deliver that line. But that's kind of where I'm on with what the OA stands for at the moment. Okay. And then she catches the bird, which was the first time I realised, oh, she can see in this place. It took me until like the end of this scene to be like, oh, she can see.
She was just sensing her father out the window.
Yeah, I don't know why it took me to that point. To be like, oh yeah, okay, she can see. So then she wakes up and can see as well. So all's well that ends well.
Yeah, like awesome. So the other thing I think I would add to that is that in this scene, it's very clear that that Prairie is deciding not to stay because she can't leave them in the basement.
Yeah,
it's kind of like bringing back a more severe decision that she has to make. In terms of even back whenever she decided not to have the sandwich because she wanted the rest of them to have it too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like bringing that aspect of it out. Obviously, this is a much bigger question. Like, will you die and be peaceful, or will you go back into captivity to save or to be with these people? And
but I think that's a really valid point, though. I think it is an example of Prairie's extreme empathy. Just writ large, and I think that's a really astute observation that we have essentially seen her do this with the sandwich as well. And obviously the stakes, if you will excuse a pun, are a little higher this time around, but the point remains the same.
It does. Okay, awesome. So she wakes up, having decided to go back after eating the bird, and Hap is nursing her back to health.
Yeah, I'm not
lovely man.
I love the more I see of Hap, the more I love him as a character, because he is so duplicitous. the way he talked, like, so this scene is shot, she's kind of in a well-lit room, it's quite close up and in soft focus, it's quite it's quite kind of like gentle and intimate the way it's shot, and he's saying things which are, to me, reminiscent of someone who is maybe like an abusive spouse or something. I thought I'd lost you, I wasn't thinking, all these kind of platitudes to kind of show that you care about someone without ever actually taking responsibility for your actions or apologizing. There's a real like insidiousness to his character, and the little things he mentions in this scene as well. So he says, there's quite a long run-on sentence, which I won't say the whole of, but within this sentence he says, "You were gone a long time, the only non-scientific death I've had here, and I've been doing this study for years," which sows these seeds. I mean, obviously we've seen a body in the in the previous episode, but how many people has he killed by doing this? That's "you're the only non-scientific death I've had here." How many? And obviously, she came back from it, so I'm assuming most of those people have come back. But have there been others apart from the people that we've seen in captivity that have died accidentally? But yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I think later on in the episode we sort of get an answer to that a little bit, because he mentions on the tapes whenever Homer's listening to them, he mentions that Hap mentions himself that once he started working with NDE survivors, then it sort of advanced. It makes me think that he was just doing this to random people, even more random than he does it now. But he was just picking random people, not even using the NDE as an excuse. He was just killing random people, and he probably went through a lot before he got the NDE survivors.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think I don't know if it's ever hinted at in this episode, but to me, his infatuation, his kind of like cold, detached infatuation with this, to me speaks of someone who is doing something for a reason beyond the scientific. I think it would seem like quite a natural arc, or not. It's not really an arc, because I don't think he's going to change that much, but quite a natural progression for his character for it to be revealed that he is doing this because someone close to him died, and he wants to establish the existence of the afterlife and find a way to communicate with them or something like that. I think that that seems to me the direction that he's going in, so I'm kind of starting to build a little theory about that in my head. But generally I love the way that he's written and performed. We went into this a bit in the last episode, but I think it's just as true in this one. He really feels like he believes what he is doing is right, and he's able to convince himself that he's a good man, despite the fact that everything in this situation clearly indicates that what he is doing is monstrous.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what you mean. I think there was a point there where it was also mentioned that she was gone for 7 minutes with no pulse.
Yeah.
And when he said non-scientific death, what I imagine that meaning is it wasn't in his little lab.
Yeah.
It's the first person he's
somebody
killed.
Banged on the back of the head with a gun. Which, actually, I have to say, one point in the OA's favour, this is probably... I'm racking my brain now. I'm trying to think of any other time I've seen someone be killed by being banged on the head with a gun, which is a totally believable way to, if you hit someone in the temple with the butt of a gun, you will probably kill them. And I've never seen it happen in a film or a television show. But credit to the OA, they were like, yep, he hit her on the back of the head with a rifle and it killed her, because your brain is not meant to take that kind of trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And every other show, they just smack it. Like they're
going crazy with it. Yeah, like, people getting hit in the head with steel pipes all the time, and it's like, I'll just shrug that off. It's fine.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so Prairie wakes up. He puts her out again, and then she goes down into the basement.
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't go down of her own accord. He puts her there, and then she wakes up, and the audience is let into the idea that she could see before her cellmates, because we're sort of shown her point of view, and it shows sort of the light of the ceiling coming into focus. So she comes up, and Homer's like, "It doesn't matter, it's okay. You didn't get away, but it's okay. You're alive."
Yeah.
And Scott's just like, I want to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And just loudly announces that she has brain damage as well, which is like, oh, cool. Thanks, Scott.
That was a really funny moment to me. I thought that was really well delivered, because she says, we've been going about it all wrong. We shouldn't be trying to get out. We should be trying to get in. And then I love Scott just like stops talking to her, walks over to Rachel, and just says, "I think she has brain damage."
Yeah, no, he gets some good lines in this, Scott, I have to say.
Yeah, really, really good delivery. Also, when he tells Perry to go fuck herself whenever she says we're angels.
Yeah,
also good.
So like just immediate disregard for that idea, which is, given where he's possibly come from, it's not that surprising, I think. I noticed in this opening scene, I'm sure he had it on in the last 2 episodes, but this is the first time I spotted it, that Homer is wearing a jumper with a wolf on it, which I'm assuming is his like college football team's mascot, which explains Prairie's hilarious reaction to finding like a shitty wolf jumper in Kmart or wherever they were. But yeah, I didn't notice that in the last episode. Yeah, Costco. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. It is funny. Like, but so he's his spirit animal. But what do you call it? Also, there's a moment where she says to Homer, when you listen to Rachel sing, don't you feel it? And Homer's like, in my bones. I don't know. I obviously I love this show because I've got you watching it and we're doing it on a podcast. I love this show, but there are moments in the storyline. This show takes itself very seriously, if you know what I mean. And there are certain moments where if you're not in the mode, like if I'm just like sort of taking notes on the episode and I've watched it a few times already and I'm noticing these things now, so I'm in the mode of doing it. And things like this, where I'm sort of not in the emotion of the episode while taking notes. It straddles a line of a little bit cheesy, but also could be viewed as like, oh, this is really cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think particularly those moments where they're supposed to, where the show takes its time to kind of like revel in a transcendental transcendent musical experience. I feel like the show's never really captured that. I understand, I think, what they're going for. They don't want that. Maybe they don't have the access to incredibly complex, well-performed music, so they go simple instead because that's the thing that they can do. But it hasn't really worked for me. So yeah, this sort of returning to Rachel singing, like, she was a good singer, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like the way it was presented to me. It wasn't like, oh, this is like a mind-blowing performance. So then when Homer is like, I can feel it in my bones, like, have you guys forgotten what good music sounds like? Or I appreciate it's been a few years, Homer, but you should listen to Miley Cyrus. I'm trying to think of someone else, not Miley Cyrus. She's not that good to sing.
Like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
See, that was actually a good joke until you were like, no, not Miley Cyrus. You're just admitting that your brain actually went to Miley Cyrus.
Well, that shows how wildly out of touch I am with pop music. And to be honest, like I don't know who's pop. Kesha. Let's.
What? I haven't heard from Kesha in a long time.
No, I don't. Like, Kesha's not been around for a while either. Should do a separate podcast to like 2 men in their 30s try to explain modern pop music to teens. A skateboard on the shoulder, like, what's up, kids?
Yeah, are skateboards even cool anymore?
Oh, they've got to be. Skateboards never stop being cool.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. There was a line in this scene, actually. Did you catch it? Prairie said, that you're very, basically trying to explain why they're angels, and she says that Rachel whispers to her plants at night to help them grow without the sun.
Yeah,
Is that a thing?
I mean, it's kind of that, like, benevolent life giver thing. You're sort of invoking vibrancy and life in something, I guess, is what she's talking about. I wasn't aware that angels did that. I don't think it's in the Bible, but I'm not sure how close this is going to skew to the Judeo-Christian version of angels, or whether they're going to just do their own thing. Is it going to be more like Teen Angel? Did you ever watch that show?
No.
It was like Teen Angel, where a kid at high school dies in like a car crash, and then he comes back to like be the spirit guardian for his best friend, and it's a hilarious Disney comedy.
I think I've seen the opening credits of it. Like the retro sort of nostalgia opening credits montages of all the different TV shows. I think I've seen it.
Teen Angel would have been in there. There was a great crossover episode with the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I'll say that much. So I'm looking forward to the inevitable Netflix reboot of the gritty Netflix reboot of Teen Angel at some point.
Unbelievable. I think actually, funny enough, now that we're on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I think I read at Halloween time when I was reading stuff about Hocus Pocus, I think they used the CG model of Thackeray Binks the cat from Hocus Pocus as Salem in the Sabrina the Teenage Witch show. I think they just used the exact same 3D model.
Well, the new one.
Yeah, like I think in moments of the TV show they needed it for some reason. I think they used it in some way. I think it was a puppet sometimes, wasn't it?
In the original, it was like a puppet the whole time, but like it was.
Oh, was it? Okay.
From what I remember, actually, to be fair, it's been a long time, so maybe there were moments where it ambulated and they needed like a model. I'm trying to think now. All I remember.
Hang on, maybe it's that Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It was a puppet, and they used that. No, it was a puppet in Hocus Pocus, and they used that in Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Write in and let us know.
Let us know. Any of you cat specialists out there, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. Of the scene ends with Prairie saying, "I can see. That's how I know I'm an angel."
Yeah.
You know, it's a big moment, and she can see again, and it's well done. But I don't know if it would pass peer review for being proof that you're an angel.
Yeah,
but,
I feel like she's jumped a couple of steps in the kind of empirical process of demonstrating that she is an angel. Like it's sort of, she's gone a bit Uri Geller here and been like, I must have magic powers because because I've come back from the dead twice.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so BBA says they're popping out of the story now.
Yeah.
BBA says, I wish I met you sooner. I wish that you knew my brother Theo.
Yeah.
And then she goes down into her car. The boys help her in, Steve and Jesse, and she gets a call from Rod Spence again.
Yeah.
Rod Spence wants to know when she's coming down to sort out the brother's will.
Yeah, so it's an interesting scene, this one, I think. Excuse me, because first BB-8 is played like a woman who has just had a religious experience, which kind of leans into this idea of Prairie being an angelic character. And really, it's the first time I've bought why any of these characters in The Boys and BB-8 are kind of infatuated with her. It's the first moment that's really sold me on their relationships to her. But it was really nice. And Steve, when they're walking her to the car, he's an odd character, Steve, because he's still a complete cock, and I kind of hate him. I don't just kind of hate him; I do hate him. But there are moments where, like, he does things. It's like there's a good kid in there. He's just a dick, like 95% of the time. And this is one of those moments where he, like, you know, gets her car, like, picks up her car keys for her, opens her car door for her. There's a bit later involving a van as well, where he's really nice to her. And it's just, you know, once you're in his good books, I feel like he is generally pretty loyal to you. And this is a moment like that which kind of made me hate it a bit, because I was like, don't make me like Steve even momentarily, show, right? he hasn't earned that. And there was a classic Konrad moment here when she offers Steve and Jesse a ride home, and they say, we live here, and I was like, wait, have they moved into like the half finished house or something? They like run away from home, and then as it turns out, no, they just like live in the, you know, estate or whatever. Yeah, but I mean, Jesse's isn't much better, to be honest, as we find out.
Yeah, so the next scene actually has Jesse going home with his sister Allie is there.
Yeah.
She's waited up. For one thing, she's really high. She didn't actually notice the door was open.
No. No.
And she's had a visit from the fantastically named Mustache Maureen. Now there's a bit of analysis I want to do on that name, to be honest with you, because this show is, in my opinion, really good at building, like, saying very little in terms of the dialogue, but you get a lot of backstory that you can extrapolate out of it.
Yeah.
So, for example, especially in building the lives of these boys and BB-8, there's not much time that they give to it, but there's a lot you can take from it. So, for example, in this stage, it's the first time we're sort of led into Jesse's house, and Mustache Maureen is mentioned. Now, later on in the episode, it clicks with you because Steve is singing a song about Allie. He's like drumming on the steering wheel of the bot, and he's singing about Allie being, now I'm not going to say the word, but it's a D word, which is a hate word for a lesbian.
Yeah,
and he's like drumming on the thing, singing about that, and it makes me realize, okay, that makes the Mustache Maureen comment is so weighted in meaning now, because you can imagine before Jesse's sister Allie came out as a lesbian, because I assume Mustache Maureen is like her girlfriend, right? He's come around to watch a show with her. And before she came out as a lesbian, maybe Maureen was sort of quite masculine, and they always used to sort of slag her off in their family, saying, oh, there's Mustache Maureen, because she's got a mustache. And now, so now that she's actually realized herself and come into her own sexuality, she's now going out with Mustache Maureen. She's like, no, I don't call her that anymore. You know?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to. And I also think it's quite interesting, the kind of dichotomy between how Ali speaks about Maureen, and I don't call her that anymore. We're in a grown up relationship. I treat her with some respect, and then how she talks about Prairie and I can't remember who else she mentions. She mentioned the trans character. I can't remember their name
Buck.
now. Buck, that's right. Yeah. So actually, she's more respectful of Buck. It's not as, she's not as dismissive of Buck as she is of Prairie, who she seems to outright dislike. Buck, I think she refers to him as like that little trans kid, which is a bit like, I'm not sure about that one, but at least she acknowledges that they are trans rather than just being a complete twat about it. But it's an interesting relationship, and as you say, you get a lot of characterization for Ali here in a very short period of time, and that they are quite good in this show at capturing a type of home life in the kind of broad picture. So this when you first get introduced to this character, and it certainly worked on me, I was like, oh, is this Jesse's mum? She seems very young to be his mum, and you find out later that she's not, she's his sister. But it has it conjures this image that I think a lot of us have probably experienced, of people who either were raised by parents who took drugs with them and smoked weed with them or something, or had maybe like siblings who did the raising, and it's not the most wholesome home life because drugs are so kind of so intrinsically involved in in the sort of day-to-day socializing with each other. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely seen kids like this, and it really kind of struck me as a believable realization of this kind of relationship, and tells you a lot about Jesse as well as a result.
It does, and it also shows like a little bit of an innocence at the end as well with Jesse when he says like, "Do you believe in angels? Do you think Mom was an angel?"
Yeah.
And she said, "I don't think angels commit suicide."
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of innocence there to him. Later on, we hear that later on when Prairie goes back to tell the story, like we're not there yet, but when we do get there, you can hear her when she's on the stairs listening to them, and they're all sort of questioning whether she's telling the truth, which is interesting to me because at this moment Jesse very much believes what she was saying.
Yeah.
So he sort of, we didn't hear exactly who had the strong thoughts in that group at that point, but at this point, in my opinion, Jesse does believe what she's saying.
Yeah, I think Jesse is quite, I don't want to call him weak-willed, but I think he's more easygoing. I think he's seems quite open-minded, and he's willing to go with the flow, which can mean he gets manipulated into doing bad things, as is the case with the drug stuff with Steve. But I think, as you say, in the case of this, he's also willing to accept quite out there ideas if they feel right to him. So yeah, this is a really good introduction. I know it's not really an introduction because we've met Jesse before, but it's kind of the first time we've really seen a lot of Jesse, and I thought it was a really effective way to introduce us to him as a wider character. I also enjoyed that Kubrick gets mentioned. Stanley Kubrick gets name dropped in this, which makes two all-time great directors we've had name dropped in the first 4 episodes. I think the creators of this show might be cinephiles somehow. We're doing well.
I kind of feel like those moments, like, although like I appreciate them being name dropped, like moments in TV shows like that, it's kind of like we need a show that we know these directors.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that. It's like, we gotta mention Hitchcock, dude. We gotta mention Kubrick. And it's like, okay, we all know who Alfred Hitchcock is. You don't need to do it. It's fine. Especially if it's just I mean, I'm ashamed to admit it does work on me because I'm like, I also know those directors. But yeah, it's a bit. It's kind of like, I'm not sure what purpose it serves, like, because it's not like you're directly referencing Strangers on a Train or whatever. You're just like, I don't know, Alfred Hitchcock. Know that guy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you remember him? Yeah. Anyway, so BBA, we find out, didn't actually go to her brother's funeral. She talks a little bit about a twin connection, which she broke. And then she needs to move stuff, basically. Also, there's the idea, like, Rod, her lawyer, or sort of her brother's lawyer, says, did not read the will. And she had this really nice moment where she says, nice in terms of the character getting a chance to be a bit extra, I suppose. I turned my brother into the police, which led to his suicide.
Yeah.
No, I will not read.
So turned him over to the police, who forced him into
No, I did
rehab,
not,
and
yeah.
now he's dead. No, I did not. Which, talking again about getting a lot of information about a character in really, really short periods of time. That kind of like script writing, economy of script writing. That is a great example of it as well. Like it's you get a lot in that, and it doesn't feel forced because of the context of the scene that it's in. So it's a really, really good bit of writing there. And cha-ching, 50 grand coming BBA's way. As soon as they said that, I'm like, okay, you have told me that this character is getting a lot of money. This means at some point they're going to have to do up a gym or something like that. There's going to be some kind of montage where they're like, we need to do this the old-fashioned way, and then it's like, take it to the limit, and then they're gonna have to be like mopping floors and like painting walls, and her money is going to be a thing that pays for it. So I'm looking forward to that. There's going to be she's going to pay for something, and I hope it's going to lead to a montage cleaning sequence. That's all I'm saying.
Awesome! I can't wait. Okay, so we'll talk about this very, very briefly. Like, I want to get through some of this I'm going to call it real world stuff.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that isn't Prairie's story, because I really want to speak at length about the stuff that we see later on in the story.
Yeah.
But there's a few scenes here. Like, so first of all, Nancy's reading the book about the boy Jamie. It's called Stolen, I noticed. And she's thinking about going back to work because that's what Jamie's mother did.
Yeah.
Abel's like, yeah, sure, whatever you want. I'll take Prairie to her appointment.
Yeah, Scar's mentioned again, Nancy's thinking about money. That's really all I've got from this, which I guess is, this couple are returning to normality, and the scars are just, they're just keeping that the idea of the scars on Prairie's back ticking over in our mind, I guess.
Yeah, and also like they're sort of approaching it in a way like, I don't know, almost as if, Nancy anyway, is not really paying too much attention to what Prairie wants. No. It's kind of like, I read in this book, I have to do this, so I'm going to do this. She's not actually sitting down with Prairie and saying, what do you want? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve and Jesse are going to drive BBA. At the moment where he sings about Jesse's sister.
And you're gonna get the old lady get squeezed, making Jesse sit in the middle.
Jesse really wanted the window seat.
Don't make me like you. Don't make me fall in love with you, Steve. Don't you do it.
That path only leads to heartache.
And like this is a great little scene actually. The extended scene. I hated it as well when Steve like hammers on the horn and is like, clear a path, and there's like no one in the way. It's just like it's just a driveway. It did make me laugh. But yeah, great little scene between these three characters here. In
the room.
Yeah, when they actually get to Theo's room, which I couldn't tell when they start playing the generic rock music that Jessie finds, and she's like, "You're gonna make it," and BBA's like, "You're gonna make everyone in this building start taking heroin again." I wasn't sure if this is actually the drug rehab center where Theo did kill himself, or whether she was joking.
Yeah. No. I think it is. Yeah,
okay.
I think it is
because she kind of walks that back when they're like, "What?"
She's speaking to two of her students. She realizes.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. It's like the school board might have something to say about me bringing these children to a heroin rehab center.
Yeah,
it was a field trip.
Yeah, it was a field trip. They've learnt a lot. I don't know what the math teacher was taking it there for.
Well, they need to learn how to buy drugs.
And they need to know the ratios of the heroin.
There's a lot of fractions involved. Let me tell you.
Okay. I also like that the sort of the Jesse Steve that shows the difference in their approaches to dealing with BBA. So Jesse very much sits down with her, has a heart-to-heart conversation in which it's revealed that his mother's dead, his dad left them. And then they have a little touching moment, whereas Steve is just like, I'm going to put on your brother's clothes.
Yeah, and then realise instantly that I've made a terrible choice, but stand there like a T-posing video game character, just like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to stay here. And like BBA's clearly tearing up, and it's like, okay, good job, Steve. Take the rough with the smooth.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so, Jesse's dad left and all that sort of thing. So a little bit of characterization there. I don't think there's much we can extrapolate out of it that we haven't said already, to be honest with you. Okay, so Prairie and the therapist then. Riz Ahmed.
Your friend and mine, Riz Ahmed. Great to see him. Absolutely great to see him.
Yeah. Riz Ahmed, of course, of Rogue One, Four Lions. Plenty of stuff. He's great actor.
Dead set. I love Riz Ahmed. He's in The Sound of Metal is a movie that's coming out this year, or it is already out in some places, and he looks great in it. So the things I interpreted from this scene are there's boxes and lamp parts on the kind of shelving unit behind Prairie, which to me suggests that he is new in town, and more importantly, counsellor with a leather jacket equals cool counsellor. Counsellor with a brown sweater equals lame counsellor. The dichotomy of man. Like, where does Riz Ahmed's character? I didn't even catch his name actually, to be honest. But I love that he is. You can basically see the internal turmoil within him. I want to be cool, but I also want to be functional in my appearance.
Yeah, he's like this bland office crap puts me to sleep. Want to take a walk? He's like really
swings his leather jacket over his shoulder, like come jump in. But then he's like realizes he drives like a Hyundai or something. He's like, come jump in my car. It's like, all right, okay, nice one, Riz.
Yeah. Okay, so that's him.
Yep.
There was a lot of conversation going on there. Was there anything in particular what they were saying which stuck out to you? Sort of a lot of talking about, like, it's almost like the whole scene was basically there for Prairie to open up to him at some point.
Yeah, it's setting the groundwork.
She didn't expect him to be open and like it's all up to you. He even offered for her to push him in a pond.
Yeah, I think it seems like it's laying the groundwork for conversations that will happen in future. And to be honest, most of this conversation seemed to exist in service of the final line from Riz Ahmed's character, where he says, "You're not a prisoner," which made me go, in capital letters on my notes, because I don't think that's necessarily true or at least it might be true in the sense that he is thinking of it, but it might not be true in every sense.
Interesting. Okay, so then she starts the story again. This time it's interesting because they start with a sort of real profound line again, like she always does, but she actually starts to unpack it a little bit. So she says, "You don't really know something until your body knows it," and she's like, "It took me a while to understand that." It's almost like the writer's like, "See, that's a good line, but probably have to explain that a little bit to them." Knowledge
is a rumor until it lives in the body. It's like, I feel like they came up with a line and then they worked backwards from there to fit it into the scene.
Yeah, but again, it's really cool.
Yeah, it works. It works.
That seems like something Prairie would do. Like, she's lying awake in her bed. She's like, "Oh, that's good. I'll use that to open the story tomorrow."
Yeah, she's a natural storyteller.
Yeah. So Hap comes to get her again. He still obviously thinks she's blind.
I didn't realise that until this scene. I was like, oh, she's pretending to be blind for him. That's clever. Which, again, is like, Prairie, she's more switched on than she seems, all innocent and sweet. But she's pushing people downstairs and pretending to be blind when it suits her. Like, Prairie, she's got a nasty streak in her.
Literally, she's like Ozzy Osbourne. She's biting the head off a bird. Like.
Sharon! That's what she's like. She's walking around the...
Sharon.
Walking around the prison shouting Sharon.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting that Hap sort of still trusts her because even though she tried to escape.
Yeah. Well, I think he's just infatuated with her, both sexually and from what he can gain from her in a scientific sense, I think. I would like to point out at this juncture that the moment where he sucks the headphones before putting them in is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. That is horrific. Who does that? No, don't. If you listen to me, listener, and listeners, if you're on the audio podcasting apps, I'm pointing at the camera right now. I'm pointing at you. Don't ever suck your headphones before you put them in your ears. That's what weirdos do.
Yeah. To be honest with you, there's a few moments in this which really put Hap across in a real creepy way. If he wasn't creepy already. There's also the moment where, like later on, where he's rubbing the cream into Homer's ears.
Yeah. There's and it's really good, like kind of Foley work, like on that creamy hand sound that they get. It's horrible. The Hap gets the worst of it in this episode. I mean, he deserves it, but I couldn't believe it. I had to pause the video when he put the It's like, Jesus, Jason Isaacs, how much did they pay you to do this?
I would, if I was him, I'd be like, you sure these are brand new?
Yeah. If I find out that these have been in someone else's mouth or ear, for that matter, but before me, I am suing you. That's what I want it is. He wanted it in his contract.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So he takes her over and gives her a little lie detector test, basically with the big ear machine that he had from the second episode.
Yeah.
And he sort of he's asking questions, and she's very clever in the way that she makes him ask the question, so therefore she doesn't really have to lie.
Doesn't have to give away anything. Yeah, too big either. Yeah,
exactly. So, to be honest with you, there's not much to talk about here because she literally does give him some stuff. So she says, like, my father was there. The big thing was that she chose to come back, and he really pinned on that, and he was like, oh, you chose to come back, and I think that's something that he had never even discovered in his own research before.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really stuck out to me in this, because as you say, he's kind of getting the answers. So there's not too much analysis to be done, I think, in what she's saying. This idea of like a great evil that she and 5 other people are trying to prevent, or she and 4 other people, in fact, are trying to prevent. I wonder if it's him, or wonder if it's something that his research is going to cause. That's kind of what I was thinking during this scene, was trying to pin down exactly where this great evil is coming from. Because where he's at the moment doesn't initially seem like he has... I guess what he's doing is evil.
Yeah, choose your words carefully here, Konrad.
Like when you have angels talking about a great evil, to me that sounds like, cosmic level destruction. That doesn't sound like 5 people or 4 people trapped in a room. Maybe that is a great enough evil for angels to be concerned about it. But I'm definitely feeling like there's got to be something else coming down the pike.
Okay, interesting. So they've got a plan. The plan is to suck the gas out of the room.
Yep.
Through the holes, so that the person who's going, that Hap takes, or that they're trying to convince Scott to do it, so that Prairie can go. So Homer and Scott to suck it out, so that Hap will be able to take them, but she'll be actually awake when she goes.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty cool plan. Good plan.
Yeah.
Scott doesn't want to do it. And he sort of explains what we were analyzing in the last episode or two, where he says, like, at least you were all taken healthy, and he shows his chest, and he's covered in what you can imagine are injection points. He says, at least you were healthy. Also, there's also another great line from Scott here, where she's like, don't you believe this? Like, don't you believe what Prairie's saying or whatever? And Scott's like, she got hit in the head, Rachel. Hard. For him, he's just like, she's nuts, I mean,
it's not unreasonable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even if he could be more diplomatic in the way he's putting the point across.
Yeah, exactly. So they eventually, Homer eventually says, I'll go, and I don't even have to pretend to be blind. So he decides to go. A month passes, and then it's go time.
Yep.
But it didn't go very well.
No.
Prairie starts to suck in the thing as well as Rachel. They both sort of go unconscious, and Rachel hurts herself. But what they notice is Scott starts speaking to Prairie, and she starts doing what he wants.
I thought this was just her doing a bit, to be honest. Like, at first I was like...
You're a real comedian.
Yeah. Well, first off, why are you saying comedian? Like, that's not... That's fine. I don't think you need to, say that. Yeah. I actually don't know if the gender term has been kind of, normalized at this point, but I feel like comedian is only used by people who are, using it disparagingly to refer to a female comedian, to be honest.
I have only heard... I've seen the word comedian written down recently. I think Netflix... I'm not 100% sure. Does Netflix say comedian in their little descriptions?
I'm not sure. I'd be interested to know, actually, because that might be me just speaking out of ignorance. But every time I've heard someone say comedian, it has been in the way that Scott has said it here, where it's like, "Oh, aren't you a great female comedian?" It's like, okay, fine. You didn't need to bring gender into this, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's just say comedian. Have them just be respected for being that,
being funny. But I thought she was doing a bit here. I was like, this is great from Prairie. Like, she's opening her eye. It was like we talked about King Kong on our other podcast the other week, and I was like, this is like when Naomi Watts entertains King Kong. Like, she's doing some great physical comedy here, but as it turns out, it's not that.
Yeah. She's actually been infected by a drug that means someone can order you around and you do exactly what they want.
Devil's breath.
And interesting enough, Steve knows about it.
Steve and Jesse, they both know about it. Like, although
French knew about it.
Yeah, French rather, not Jesse. Yeah. Yeah, which is, and I feel like Jesse and French is like, when he mentions it, it's like, oh, he's a smart guy, he's just done the research. Whereas when Steve mentions it, everyone's like, why do you know about this, Steve?
Yeah. Why do you know about drugging these apparent women who were drugged who would do what you want?
Yeah.
Why do you know about that, Steve?
I know about this because I've watched lots of movies to do with voodoo, and this is what the basis of voodoo comes from. Devil's breath.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, that's what they used to give people. They put them in like zombified states, so it's where zombies came from, basically, is devil's breath.
Really interesting. We did a lot of we went to like a voodoo museum when we went to New Orleans. It was really cool. We also learnt interesting stuff about Marie Laveau. Have you heard of Marie Laveau?
No, I don't think so.
She was like a voodoo priestess who people believe was really magic, but actually it was that she got all the women in her family. She had a load of women like aunties, young teens, other sisters, cousins. She got them all to pretend to be her. So they would all go to readings as her. So like this word spread around like Marie Laveau, the voodoo priestess, she could appear in any age,
That's great.
And apparently she knew she could fortune tell because she was a hairdresser. And therefore, she like got all the rumors from the town.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's like like The Prestige, where Hugh Jackman gets like a drunk actor who looks exactly like him to play himself.
Yeah,
it's like what happens when one of her like siblings or whatever develops like an alcohol problem or gets really overweight, and they're like, I saw Marie Laveau, but she was like about 40 pounds heavier than the other time.
She appears at any weight,
and she was really drunk as well.
Yeah, but it's funny as well. Just to end this little Marie Laveau section, little detour. We also went to the St. Louis. I always go to St. Louis Armstrong, but it's not. It's just St. Louis Cemetery. Louis Armstrong and St. Louis are both big figures in New Orleans. It's funny, but in the St. Louis Cemetery, all the above ground graves down there because they can't bury people underground because of the high water line.
Yeah.
So basically. Everyone talks about like her grave, and like there's a grave with like a load of like people go and like put marks on the grave.
Yeah.
So there's like graves with like marks everywhere. Every single tour guide's like, they can't be bothered waiting in line to see the grave, so they're like, that's not the real grave. Let me show you where the real grave is, and every one of them takes you to a different grave.
Great.
And they're like,
this
hustle. Is the one. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, that's Marie Laveau. But so 1 year passes.
Yes.
Until. Homer actually they're able to suck the gas out. There's a funny moment where Steve's like, why did it take so long? And French is like, it takes time to get good at something.
Yeah.
And then Steve's like, I know that. Come on, I know that.
How long? I've established a really big client base for my drug empire here. Right. I know these things. Thanks, French. I've got a question for you actually. Before we move on from before we go past the next scene, why did they wear sheets when they were inhaling the gas every other time apart from the first time?
Okay, so two things. One, they wanted to conjure the idea of religious imagery.
Right. Okay. Cool.
The second thing is, this is me rationalizing it now. Okay.
Yeah.
If they breathe in enough that they collapse, and then Hap comes in and sees them, they need to be believably sleeping. So maybe if they fall on the floor, he's like, they're just taking a nap on the floor. They got a blanket on.
I'm going to say like 60% there on believing that. I was just like, were they like playing E.T. when they they were doing like a reenactment of the movie E.T. and then suddenly the gas started and they're like, we haven't got time to drop these blankets, so we're just going to have to carry on.
Maybe it's like they were breathing it in and breathing it down. The blanket would stop it going back through the vent the other way.
Maybe,
I have no idea.
Maybe. I feel like there must be a reason for it, and I'm just too dumb to know what it is.
I think the reason is always going to be tenuous. I think they wanted the imagery. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because they did look like women of, biblical women doing that.
Yeah, they look like Mary.
Okay, so Homer finally gets in to Dr. Happenstein's lab.
Yeah.
And it's a really weird drowning machine. The interesting part is Homer couldn't actually go through with it properly because his heartbeats, he was scared, right? So what did you think about this? It's sort of revealed what his experiment is looking like now. What do you think?
I mean, it's pretty horrific. I think I love the production design of the set in general. This kind of like odd, like hexagonal padded tube, and the apparatus for drowning. It feels it feels like something you find in like a high school science lab or something. Like, it looks believably scientific, but it doesn't look high tech. It looks like something that someone with a limited budget has maybe a limited budget but a knowledge of science has rigged together. And in terms of a method of nearly killing someone, it is horrific. To drown them is very painful and very scary. So yeah, like it's you can totally get why Homer is scared the first time, and I think it actually does more for Homer's characterization than anyone else, because and to be honest, again, I don't want to play like backseat filmmaker here. I would have used montage editing here to show how many times he did this, because I think that would have to me that would have really hammered home how brave Homer is to keep doing this over and over again, based on how horrific the experience must be.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally just put in the dialogue. They do a little bit of montage-y thing where they're sort of having images flash and like sort of fade into each other. But it's not the type of montage you're talking about. I know you're talking about sort of a montage where they show the helmet going on 100 times or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Really
like you just really quickly cut between every single time it happened to really hammer home how many times Homer did this. Because I feel like that's a little bit lost in it, is that he's doing this over and over again on faith with Prairie, basically, and that takes extreme conviction and bravery to do.
Okay, awesome. So we're getting to the end of the time, but I want to sort of mention a few points at the end of this episode. So we do have the idea that Homer's really, really brave. That's cemented. He also goes and sneaks into Hap's office at one point, and he's able to get a few different bits of information. One thing is he finds tapes with He finds tapes with his name on it, and he plays the tape. Yeah. Do you have anything to say about that?
I can't actually remember what the name is it Mr. Johnson they call him in the tape?
Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, yeah, in the tape. So I guess it's kind of confirmed shortly afterwards, but my interpretation of it was, he's actually able to record dreams, or not record dreams, but in the same way that we can kind of record dreams now, he's able to record these kind of experiences happening on the astral plane or the other side, or like as they kind of refer to it in this episode. And I think we can get more into this probably in the next scene, where we actually see what Homer's other side looks like. But I love this idea that there's a kind of material link, or a scientific link, between the material world and this other side, that where we can actually listen to and perhaps see what's actually going on there. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Obviously, he has to run back. He throws himself on the floor. I thought that was pretty clever. To do that.
I do feel like I wonder why Homer didn't just like bash Hap on the head with one of the gas canisters or something at this point. I feel like if you did it that many times, that would have been an option at least once or twice.
I have wondered that before. Why didn't he just literally beat him to death? Because at that stage,
he's a young fit guy. I feel like he could do it.
Unless between him and the others there is another code lock door. Also, there is the idea that he is fully buying into Prairie's understanding that we need to, or she's saying like we need to, go in, not out, to escape.
I guess maybe, so. Yeah, maybe that's me oversimplifying what Prairie's goal is here and the degree to which Homer buys into it. But there was definitely a part of me where I was like, you could knock him out and tie him up and get all of these answers in a way that is far quicker and easier than what you're doing.
Yep. Okay, so he eventually does actually do it, and he manages to die awake. Really cool line. And he goes into what looks like a ventilation shaft.
Yeah, he wakes up in Die Hard.
Yeah, wakes up in Die Hard. And then he falls through a bathroom roof and eventually finds a fish tank, eats a fish. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, all perfectly normal. So I feel I feel like obviously this is a significantly different version of the other side to the one that we saw of Prairie's, which makes me think that maybe the way that this other place kind of manifests to each person is a reflection of their own personalities. So whereas I get the sense that Prairie is quite tranquil, quite calm, and that's reflected in the place that she sees. Homer seems to be defined by fear as much as by bravery. So like his bravery comes from the things he is worried that will happen to the people he cares about, and maybe that's why things like fear of spiders manifests itself so poignantly in the other side that we see. I'm not sure what the yellow stuff leaking out of the urinals was. I was watching it and I was a bit like, this is like a goddamn David Lynch film. Like, what's going on here? And then,
urine?
Yeah. and then he goes and eats like a sea urchin and wakes himself up, presumably by aren't sea urchins like super poisonous or super? I think
I don't know if they all are, but definitely there are some.
So I'm assuming he wakes himself up by dying. Is kind of how I interpreted him eating that sea urchin. But it's a great little moment for them to show us something crazy, basically, at the end of this episode.
It was very crazy, and then basically, it puts into context a little bit of the weird movements that Prairie was doing earlier on in the episode.
Yeah.
Because the episode ends with Homer doing like a weird movement.
Yeah, he does the same kind of unwaking behavior that Prairie was doing with her hands, which seems to suggest. I'm not sure what it suggests at the moment. Like there's something, because we weren't seeing inside her head when she did it, and we're not seeing inside Homer's head when he does it. But that Prairie's response to it seems to, like when Homer is talking to her when he's like half awake, he says like, I felt chased, and I didn't actually write it down, but he says something like, it wasn't what you were describing. I feel like I haven't got it. I haven't got it yet. And then when he does the thing with the hands, it does this sort of rack focus to Prairie's face next to him, and she seems to look pleased with that, as if he has now experienced it. So maybe that, like, when you do that thing with your hands, it's a sign that something has happened, or you have kind of achieved that sort of that transcendent experience.
Okay, awesome. So he does that. There's just before that moment, she sort of comes to the understanding of like, there's a name that's truer than Prairie. It's sort of inside her. She understands it. It's truer than even Nina. And she says it sounds like away, and she couldn't sound it out loud at all. She says, when I say it out loud, it all falls apart, but it's like away.
Yeah.
And then you realize that the episode was called Away, and that's So there we go. That was episode. I'm sure we missed one or two things there. There was a lot in that episode, to be honest with you. So let us know in the comments if we missed anything. We can touch on it next week. But I think we get into what do we get into? The roundup.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so here we are for the roundup. Konrad, take us through what you thought of the show. I will open up IMDb because I have not done it yet. But overall, what did you think of this episode?
So I thought this was a really strong episode. Actually, I think that's 2 in a row that I've legitimately thought were really fun. I think the excuse me. I think we have a bit more of a direction now, and I'm enjoying the characterizations a lot more. I'm really interested to see where we go from here with both Prairie's story and whether anything more dynamic happens in the present day, because I feel like that's kind of got to happen at some point. Like something, I feel like I need to see something happen in the present day to really raise the stakes. But still, I mean, it's getting really good. I'm really intrigued by a lot of the crazy cosmic stuff that's going on. So I really hope we see more of that. In terms of theories for this week,
before you go to theories, 8.4 is the
yeah.
I'm assuming you're going to put it as similar as last week.
Yeah, I think, did I say a flat 8 for last week? I think. Yeah, so I'd say this is about the same. I think that it's still a high quality episode. I really enjoyed it, and nothing from the OA has like totally wowed me yet, but it's definitely it's ramped up in quality, and I hope they can maintain this now.
Yeah, and I will say about IMDb ratings, like, it's a bit silly that I use them, but I just use them because I like having the I just like having the audience rating. But at the same time, there are some shows which are actually pretty good shows, and if there's a certain contingent of an audience who just like, if it's a divisive show, then it will have a lot of negative reviews, which will bring it down to like a 6 or a 7. Whereas the OA doesn't seem to have that. I know some people didn't. It doesn't jibe with them or whatever. But having an 8.4 rating is hard to do on IMDb.
Yeah.
Because when people don't like something, they usually just 1-star it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's kind of, we've gone through this before, but this is the problem with any kind of 10-point or even 5-point rating system is no one knows how to use the numbers in the middle. Like something is either a 9 or an 8 or it's a 1 for the most part. So yeah, to maintain a high rating is very difficult.
Okay. Before you go into your theories, I want to say something to you.
Go on.
You need to give me a bit more credit, Konrad. I was trying to help you earlier in the season because I said to you, whenever you were talking about the glass boxes, being filled with water and them drowning, I was like, so just put in the theory matrix that he's killing them by drowning.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I was halfway there.
Yeah, I was trying to give you a little bit of something there, Konrad.
It wouldn't have been faithful to the actual theory though, because I was thinking in retrospect it wouldn't have made any sense. I say that all the time when a theory is proven to be obviously wrong, but like it wouldn't have made any sense for him to drown them where they sleep, because then you've just got to deal with wet bedding all the time, which is no one wants that, and you're going to kill those plants. So
that's the most important. Rachel speaks them back to life.
That's true. Yeah, she can whisper life into them.
Yeah. Okay. What are your theories coming out of here?
So we've kind of already touched on them, but I thought I'd just mention them again. Yeah. So OA, I'm plumping for Original Angel as it stands at the moment. We'll see whether that actually does stand for anything, or whether it's whether I'm barking up the wrong tree. I think this one is kind of crazy, but I've just thrown it out there. I'm throwing it out there to see whether anything bites. She's got scars on her back. We have seen someone with a wing. Uh-huh. They said she's the original, and we've had the word, like Prairie herself has invoked the word angel. I think those scars are something to do with angel wings. That's my crazy out there guess for this, and I would love that to be true. When I saw that lady with a wing, I was like, this is kind of nuts that you're literally showing an angel with a wing in this. But
I will say, actually, funny enough, when I first watched this show and we first saw her scars, I don't know what, in my brain, whenever I see back scars, my brain always goes to angel wings.
Yeah.
So even when I first watched that, in the first or second episode, whenever we see them when she's in the bath, my mind went straight away when I first watching it. I went, oh, angel wings.
Okay.
Now I not that I thought that she had angel wings at one point or anything like that, but I thought that's the imagery they're trying to evoke there.
Yeah.
I am very, and people who follow my channel from the very beginning know, I'm very hyper aware to religious symmetry being put into things. So many shows have religious symbolism put into them.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm hyper aware about. So I was guessing that from the very first episode.
It's the greatest book ever written, Anthony. So you've got to. Well, you've got to know. You've got to recognize all those influences. I once had the Bible sold to me. I'm not for the listeners and watchers. I'm not particularly religious, but I once had the Bible, and we're getting into hot water here. We did racism and attacking our listeners last episode. Now we're getting into religion. But I went to a religious camp when I was younger, in place of like Boy Scouts. It was like this youth group, and we had the Bible sold to us on the basis of how much sex and violence is in it, which I always thought was an interesting way to try and get kids to read the Bible. Didn't work.
But apparently literally everyone got drowned because of that. And then in Noah's Ark. And then they it's like someone selling the Bible saying, hey, you want to be more like these people who God culled from the earth.
These people are like, no, don't like it, do over.
That's what this person's like doing. He's trying to make that person who's trying to sell you the Bible is trying to probably bring the end times forward.
Yeah, they were a servant of Satan, surely.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that's all the theories you got for this week?
Yep, just those two. I guess there was a couple of other little ones which maybe I probably should put in the Matrix now, that I've mentioned in this episode, but those were the two big ones that I jotted down.
Cool. Okay, let's get into the questions then.
Awesome, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
Alright, so first question comes from MH, and MH says, why is Prairie's NDE experience displayed as peaceful, relaxing, and beautiful, while Homer has to go through the stress of being trapped and chased around in some type of facility? What might the NDEs of Scott and Rachel look like?
Yeah, so we've kind of touched on this already. I think the NDE experience kind of manifests the mentality of the person who is having it. So Prairie is quite a tranquil person. She doesn't really seem to suffer from any kind of emotional extremes in either way. So it's quite a peaceful experience, whereas Homer is less so. It's an interesting question about Scott and Rachel. Rachel, I feel like we don't really know enough about Rachel yet for me to say, but Scott's, I think, I could imagine them doing Scott's, like, and I kind of hope they don't do this, just because I don't want his character to become one note. I'm a former addict. Everything I do is to do with drugs.
Yeah.
But I suspect they might do, just because there's only 4 episodes left of this season, and they haven't got a lot of time left to characterize him. So I could see his being like a bad drug trip. Like a Gaspar Noé movie or something like that. But I'll be really interested to see if that's the case. Rachel's,
or maybe it's the other end of the drugs, and maybe he's like floating in the clouds.
Yeah, it could be euphoric as well. Maybe they do a good go the other way and surprise me and make it like a really good drug trip. Make it like a high. Rachel's, it's hard because I don't know that much about her, but I feel like August will have to be a part of it. Just because we've barely seen her, and she seemed quite important to Rachel, so I think she'll appear in Rachel's NDE experience. But I hope we see all of them. That'd be really, I don't want to say fun, but that'd be really interesting to see those.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so Bill Ross asks, has Scott risen a few points or dropped further in Konrad's eyes after this episode?
I think Steve didn't do anything particularly dickish this episode, so he got a little bit better, whereas Scott held steady. So I think like Scott still hasn't done anything as bad as misgendering someone he well knows the gender of, purely out of spite. So
who you could call his friend.
Yeah, who you could call his friend. So I think Steve is still at the top of the dickhead rankings, but Scott closed to within a nose of him, I think, in this episode. So with 4 episodes less to go, it's all to play for. I'll say that. Much.
It's all to play for. I put a cat amongst the pigeons. All right.
Great.
Okay. I'm going to now before we go. This isn't a question, but Latrice in the comments has been sort of putting in their theories every week. I don't know if there's too much theories here, but I'd like to give a shout out to Latrice because they are putting a lot of effort into sort of being on Team Konrad.
I've been reading them as well, to be honest. I'm really really into it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just mention a few sort of noticings. Is that a word? Noticings?
Sure.
I suppose it is. Noticings that Latrice had this episode. So were Prairie and Jamie both missing for 7 years? Jamie being the one that I believe Jamie's the one for the book was written about that Nancy's reading. Maybe that is so. Is Latrice sort of hinting at their thoughts are basically on was Jamie's disappearance in some way to do with Prairie's as well? Or Hap, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It could. I suppose I suspect not, purely because the way the journalist talks about Jamie in the previous episode, it seems like they've reached some kind of resolution, which I don't think they'd be able to do with Hap just wandering around kidnapping more people. So I think it's more likely to be coincidental. Though, I mean, it's possible that Hap's not the only person who knows about this and is investigating it, or attempting to trigger it in people. So it could be.
Could be. Okay. And last one here from Latrice. Something to look out for in the future, I think, just to see if this symbolism is being used there. There's some purple symbolism going on. So Prairie and Homer's clothes both have purple aspects to them.
Yeah.
The water that August was in was purple. The nighttime light in the prison is purple. So whenever they had the cloaks on, the sheets on, they were in purple light. Latrice says that it makes them think of Jessica Jones. I've never seen Jessica Jones, actually. I think it's in the superhero. It's in the Marvel universe.
Marvel Netflix series. I never saw it either, actually, but I heard it was very good.
Yeah, the purple man is the villain in that. Apparently, purple lighting was used to visually depict his controlling influence. So maybe there's something in the purple color. We'll maybe have a look at that going forward.
Well, it's quite a lurid color if we're going by the kind of color coding of emotions. So it speaks to kind of like dominance and control. So it could also be just this symbolism for Hap's control over these people. But yeah, I mean there could be more to it than that. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that as well.
Okay, awesome. And last one, this is technically a question.
Nice.
It's our old friend Donny Stats, and he says, because he has answered it himself, but I want to know what your answer is. So Donny says, what's Steve's favourite food? Now, Donny has answered it, and he said milk steak.
Oh, great. That's a great answer, Donny. Well done. I'm trying to remember what else Charlie mentions as really, really liking.
Just dog food out of a can?
Yeah, it's cat food. Yeah, cat food and beer. Listen, in the long nights spent in the half-completed house selling drugs, I bet Steve has dined on cat food and beer at some point. I reckon to continue the Charlie Day comparison. Although he's even worse than Charlie Day because he knows he shouldn't stab at a woman's breasts with his hands, and yet he still does it. Whereas Charlie Day is just an idiot.
He's oblivious to any of those social cues.
Yeah, he doesn't understand social norms.
Charlie Kelly, we should say, not Charlie
Kelly.
Day
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, Charlie Day, I'm sure, is a lovely man.
Yeah, we're not going to throw him through the gutter like this. All right, there we go. So that's the episode. Looking forward to next week now.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts, Konrad?
Just that I want to see more of these NDEs. I want to see more milky. Well, talking about milk steak, want to see more milky water, and see where that leads us.
Okay, awesome. Guys, can you make sure to like the video, subscribe on The Culture Cave, also subscribe on audio apps, either way you want to listen to it. There's a load of other stuff on The Culture Cave too. If you just watched the After Dark podcast or just listened to us on audio apps, there's a load of stuff, film analysis, TV and film reviews as well we do.
Yep.
There's our other podcast, the Best Movie Podcast Ever, which we need to be better at mentioning on here. And there's also the t-shirt, link in description if you want to go and get that. That does support the channel. Or you can just donate directly to us. The link is in the description too. And as you can see from the camera Konrad's using today, that money is very, very well spent. That was not a cheap camera.
No.
And that is all thanks to you guys watching the videos, getting a little bit of ad revenue that we get, as well as those donations as well. It all helps us. So thanks very much, guys. The only thing I have to say is goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.